this the end? The end of the 1960 winning streak? The end of our entrance into Kingsland? The end of the G4 entrance into Kingsland? And the end of the debate for which kingdom is the strongest in Rise of Kingdoms? Stick around in this video for an update on my KVK that honestly, it was a little unexpected, but here we are. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and as you saw in my prior video that went live like less than 12 hours ago, we made our way to this pass, and we were actually in Kingsland. Now, the thing that anyone could have figured out if they actually looked at our flags is that we were gassed on Storehouse. So we didn't have the crystals to actually carry on into Kingsland to continue that fight, despite the fact that doing that going into our downtime would have been pretty dumb, and there were still 2 forts on this position. So yes, we made it to Kingsland, and we were getting ready to set up to actually enter into Kingsland into a super meaningful way, when this morning, 1960 decided that they would surrender their Kingsland position and fight us instead. To me, this was really shocking after like the most impressive 7-day hold I've probably ever seen in Kingsland. They decide to walk away from it to hit us, despite the fact that we were about to enter Kingsland, which would have alleviated pressure from 1960. So there have been many times where, look, I'm not in their strategy chats to know what the heck they're thinking, but I don't quite understand it. But what did they do? They cut us at pretty much every opportunity while we were sleeping for a couple hours, and hey, it is what it is. So it sounds like, or looks like, they're making the choice to switch away from actually going for a win, which would be holding the Zig at the end, and going for alternate win conditions. Now, you may wonder, why was our flag line so vulnerable to being cut in so many different ways? And that's because there just wasn't enough Storehouse to do all the things you need to do. The reality is that in this KVK, especially after fighting in many zones in many places, most storehouses are pretty gassed on crystals unless they've had some number of days just to chill. So rather than build an extremely defensive flag line, which would have been much harder to cut, we actually went with the, we take risks and maybe we win and maybe we just get wrecked. And they attacked the flag lines and all the different places that were available, and they cut them, which is, look, we already tried to hold the zone against 960. Holding it again against them, not a very appealing idea. So what happens from here? Well, I think this represents several things, and as I probably have on the thumbnail, it's the end. It's the end of the debate as to who is going to win this KVK. It looks like it is 1093. When 960 pulled out of Kingsland and removed our ability to enter Kingsland, they also removed any chance they would have had that with the combined forces of us pushing in, along with the G4s, that perhaps the context could have changed. Now, I don't know if it would have. I don't know if it could have. But I thought GT was going to train up today, so it's just really weird to me that after a whole week, they would change their mind and say, you know what, F it. Let's just go and hit 2605 instead. But that's what they did. Now, that solidifies, again, 1093 as almost certainly the winner of this KVK, and 1960 as having taken their very first KVK loss ever. Pretty freaking crazy. This also, by the way, marks the end of the reign of the G4s, because now that 1093 doesn't have to deal with us or 1960, the G4s are almost certainly in a spot of trouble in these zones, and I think at 1093's convenience, they will push back in and reclaim the things that they had lost. So that one move by 1960 to depart from Kingsland dramatically changes the nature of everything else that happens in this KVK. So what might 960 go for? They might go for circle rewards, they might go for sanctuary rewards, they might go for all kinds of alternate win conditions other than the Zig, which again surprises me because I thought they were all in on it. But what this also does is proves that I was right, that 1960 shouldn't have cleared us out of this zone in the first place. If they had left us, even if they held the circle and had forts around here, if they had left us in this pocket such that we could enter into Kingsland, obviously the Kingsland would have been different. They would have been down here, we would have been up here, and the outcome of this KVK almost certainly could have been different for them. Because as I've been saying for a long time, I think, and this is just me, not me as speaking on behalf of my kingdom, but I think the obvious smart play, if we are in this pass as 2605, is to keep things even. That way we just let them duke it out. We try to stay in a little corner and not offend anybody and defend ourselves. And then when the time comes, probably even like 5 days from now, would have been the time to then try to make a push on Kingsland after these guys basically drained themselves on each other, right? That would have been, I think, a smarter play. And I think it's pretty obvious that like having us in Kingsland in that position would have meant more drain against 1093, which would have meant more possibility for 1960 to win. The other thing that 1960 could have done in that case is actually push in and own one of these passes over here. I mean, they fought like crazy against 1093 anyways. They just waited to do it in Kingsland when they were extremely disadvantaged for territory. Well, I mean, they could have let us have this pass. They could have taken this pass. And when this zone opened, they could have taken the easy fort drop that was here the whole time and then pushed over to this pass. And then they would have had another pass into Kingsland. And they could have fought 93 in this area by the circle or a blocked off area over here, which is really not much different from the way that Kingsland ultimately worked out anyways, except that it would have been a more balanced Kingsland fight probably. Now, we in this situation that I'm proposing, selfishly, I will say that gives us a more relevant position to do something toward the Zig at the end than what we did here. But it is what it is, and we are where we are. And if you've ever played a game like Settlers of Catan before, you know that people can make choices that you may think are not right, that throw the game for them and throw the game for you, and it is what it is. And I'm not saying that's exactly what GT has done here. I think they made a strategic choice that they felt was right. They must have thought they could take 93 all by themselves. The reality was different than that. And the reality was that by pushing us out, which drained them a little, they didn't have enough. Like, they ultimately got pushed out of Kingsland, which means they were drained. Like, if you look at their power, MX right now is down to 5.6 billion power. What's GT at? It's probably not much. They're at 14.7 billion power, down from over 21 billion power. Okay. And some of their players, their bigger players, like Addy is a freaking all-star MVP, down from 800 million power to like 160 million power, which is insane. I don't see her city here. I don't know where she is. And right now I'm showing you this from my restart account so as to not leak markers. But the point I'm trying to make is like that they ultimately got trained. Like, that's a part of the reason that they didn't win Kingsland. Now, they have a training buff scheduled for today, according to the Facebook leaks. So we'll see how much they train back up and if it's enough to push back in. But I would like to think that if they had actually let us keep doing things around here and continue to hold this pass, even if they didn't let us take this circle and they were like, no, GTFO our circle, which would be extremely understandable, but they let us keep this area, they could have trained back up, maybe held their Kingsland position, maybe, I don't know, right? Like, I'm just making assumptions here. And then both of us would have at some point been pushing in, and it would have got more interesting. So I think that's what they do, is they move around the map, they claim some stuff, they probably try to push us out of all the zones because they can, and like, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how they balance that and going for the objectives they want to go for. I think that if they wait too long, if 960 waits too long to come into this zone, then more of this zone will be owned by 93. So if there's things that they want in this zone, like a fourth circle, maybe they feel like that isn't actually obtainable. I don't know. Is there another circle that they could get to in here? I don't think so. I mean, this is like their closest circle, but I don't know. They probably have some alternate objectives in mind. So this was a really fun KVK. I don't think it's necessarily over, but I do think that it is the end of the most exciting part of the KVK. And that end came a lot sooner than I thought it would when 960 decided, all right, we're out of KL. We'd rather smash on 2605. And here we are. This is probably one of the more fun KVKs I've played in, but also one of the most exhausting KVKs I've played in. The map is honestly kind of too big. And I'll probably do a longer debrief on this map, but like, I don't quite understand. If you think about the war camps that are in this KVK, there is not really a world in which 2605 is at the same tier. There are no kingdoms, by the way, at the same tier as 1093 and 1960. There are literally no kingdoms at their tier. So the fact that we had one alliance in our war camp made it very hard to actually build and be all the places that we wanted to be. We needed like a couple more alliances worth of fully active farms to have like, I don't know, more forts, more shells, more storehouse to like do more things. And some people are like, oh, you're making an excuse. Not at all. What I'm actually trying to point to is the fact that these maps are not really designed for one alliance kingdoms. I don't think these maps are actually designed for one alliance kingdoms. And the very biggest kingdoms in the game actually can do them. Okay? But people seem to misunderstand how close to the Imperium line my main account kingdom is, 2605. Like, we left Imperium within like a week of fighting. And even my restart kingdom, which is tiny in comparison to these Imperiums that are in this KVK, is now an Imperium kingdom. Like, my restart actually flipped Imperium, which is insane. That is actually unfathomable to me that we would have flipped up into Imperium, because if we look at my restart kingdom, right? Like, dude, look at this. Where's the freaking rankings? We look at alliance power. All right, this is KVK power that's in here, but like, we're a 12.6 billion power alliance, and like, we have a 7 billion power alliance, and we're Imperium. Like, that is insane. So I don't think these maps are really designed for small numbers of kingdoms to own these zones. Like, you know, in Rise of Kingdoms, I would say this is almost like the heyday. You know, like in a Strife of the 8 KVK, you'd have 3 big kingdoms in each of these camps. And I think that's what they were designed for. And I think as much as it's like a huge coordination burden, I do feel like the game is more meant to like have that many players in all these places, except that, I don't know, it does get a bit laggy and hard to actually play. So I don't know what the answer is, man. Maybe maps like Nile, which have shorter encounters, are less exhausting. Because let me tell you, just my experience doing this is that these zones, they just last for freaking ever. And you can't fort to hold a position, really, except at some circles. So, like, you either sleep with one eye open or don't sleep to defend your flags, or you're definitely losing the position. But anyways, I think that's enough for this one video. If you want to see School Bus when he got imprisoned and swarmed by Yoda somewhere in Kingsland over here, I had a great conversation with him this morning. He messaged me on Discord. He's like, bro, I was random porting to give someone my teleport spot, and the next thing I know, I'm imprisoned and getting swarmed by Yoda. GG. So School Bus wasn't like off territory KP chasing. He hit a random port to let someone else take his TP spot, and then instantly got imprisoned because, you know, it was either Chadsky or Yoda that had King. They are not messing around, and then they swarmed him. So card in the end screen, if you want to see that one. Alternatively, if you want to see what the map looked like when I was like, hey, like we actually made it to Kingsland, card in the end screen for that one as well. Until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom.